Sing a song, my sweet poet. Sing a song of love, one that lifts my spirit up, and I remember who I am. Somewhere deep inside of me calls me home again. One that floats high on the wind is carried beyond the stars, soaring on an angel's wing, delivered with a passionate kiss that leaves no scar. Sing a song, my sweet poet, all your goodness and grace. A simple song that lifts me up, brings a smile to my face, keeps me dancing every day, singing right along. Sing it to the people, sing it to the trees, sing it to the stars in the heavens. Let it float upon the breeze and let it set us free, set us free. The poet has not died, sleeps somewhere inside, waiting and awakening, a remembering, a revival, the soul to be renewed. For I am not broken, I am whole, this is true. Sing a song, my sweet one, of believing, of seeing, of truth, one that inspires me, one that inspires you. It's a song that's straight from the heart, and will always remain the same. Let it rain like a summer shower, nurture everyone, and all who hear the word recognize the tune. Heed the call, heed the call. Sing a song, my sweet poet, not afraid anymore. Sing it to the ocean as you stand upon the shore. Sing it to the one you love and who will love you forevermore, evermore. Sing it to the people, sing it to the trees, sing it to the stars in the heavens. Let it float upon the breeze, let it set us free, set us free. Sing a song, my sweet poet, sing a song of love, sing a song, my sweet poet. Awake, arise once more. Sing, sing your song. sing along, sing your song, sing it loud, sing it loud, all night long. Sing your song, sing it loud, sing it long.
Good morning. It is Sunday, April 26th. I had to almost put my glasses on to see that. And we are still in quarantine, and so this is still coming to you by means of the wisdom of Dan Crothers and the fantastic equipment that we have here, so that we can still continue to have our Sunday services, which I think are so important to all of us. So I'm going to begin this morning by, first telling you who I am. I am Reverend Kathy Condon, and this is Unity of Beaverton. I am the senior minister here, and I have a lot of volunteers that work here and help out and keep this place running. And so I am hoping that once this quarantine is over and you feel like it's safe to come out, that you will come and visit us in person. So I will begin with reading today's daily word. If I can put my glasses on, there we go. And our word for today is release. I release all that does not contribute to my highest good. That is the affirmation. So I'm going to say that again. I release all that does not contribute to my highest good. John's gospel tells of Jesus restoring life to his friend Lazarus, who had been dead for 4 days. As Jesus cries, Lazarus comes out. His friend emerges from the tomb, burial cloth still covering his face and wrapped around his hands and feet. Jesus says to those who have gathered, "Unbind him and let him go." Even after a spiritual resurrection, I may remain bound like Lazarus by thoughts, ideas, feelings, or habits that keep me from the full experience of freedom. I release negative feelings, dissolve error thoughts, and free myself from the habits and actions that do not serve my highest good. I am no longer bound, I am free. And the quote is, "The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, 'Unbind him and let him go.'" And that's from John 11:44. So let's do a prayer and a meditation. And if you would like to just be very comfortable, you may want to close your eyes. Whatever position you want to be in, open or closed eyes, but just breathe. Just begin by a deep breath in, a cleansing breath, and just blow it out. Let's do that again. In. And once more. And sit in the peace that resides in you. Find that quiet place where nothing is disturbed, where the waters are still, and it is quiet. And it is a place of sweet, sweet comfort. Now know with me that we are sitting in the presence of God. We are sitting in the presence of the divine, which is everywhere around us and fills our being. In this place, we are safe. We are unbothered by anything that is going on in the outside world, because there is only right now. And know that in this place of this present now, life is unfolding. It is a new moment with each breath, and it is not dependent on any sort of history. We need not live from our history, but can make each day new. So awaken now, as if to the most beautiful sunrise you have ever seen, and know that that is how you are welcomed to this divine presence. There is beauty and joy all around you, and there is no want. It is only now. So thank you, God, for this reminder that I am never alone, that I am never stuck. I can always come to this place and receive a blessing. So in gratitude, I release this word and allow it to be made manifest now, and so it is. Amen. So I want to start with a few announcements this morning. That, as I said, we are on quarantine. We have a daily Zoom gathering that you are welcome to join us. If you go to the website, www.unityofbeaverton.org, you will see on the below, just scroll down a little bit, and there you will find the code to join our Zoom meeting. So you just, on whatever device you're going to use, you open the app for Zoom, and it will ask you for the ID code, and you can type in that number and be with us. That's Monday to Friday at 12 noon. So I hope you'll join us. We have a fabulous youth ministry here, and it's something that I've truly missed in the weeks that we have been on quarantine. And I hope that you will bring your children. We have the most fabulous teachers here at Unity. We have 3 women who have tons of background in teaching Unity to children, and they can't wait to meet you and your children. So be sure and check that out. Our service is at 10 o'clock on Sundays, and we do potlucks on an occasion. We have a lot of events here, concerts and gatherings and book studies. So you'll want to check us out and see what's going on that you might be interested in. All right, so And then I want to mention our prayer request form. Unity is based on affirmative prayer. This is what the kind of prayer that Unity does. It is the style of praying that Jesus did, that Jesus taught. It is affirmative prayer. We do not ask, we just state in an affirmative tone what it is we would like to see demonstrated in our life. And that truly helps to bring it into being. So you can request a prayer on our website, and either myself or our prayer angels will receive the message and pray for you when you will get a response. So please feel free to ask for a prayer. Because one of the things I always say is, if you haven't got a prayer, you haven't got a prayer. So get a prayer. All right, so now for our message for today. I have been doing a lot of reading and studying of all people, Paul. I am one of those who was quite firm in my belief that Paul was very negative, that Paul was, way overconfident, that he just thought he was in charge of everything, and that he was very negative and talked about sin a lot. And he didn't have some nice things to say about women. And so he did say some not nice things about women. However, I want to tell you that everything else that I am reading and coming to understand is really surprising, very surprising. We all know that Paul was a guard, and actually I was told that he was a Roman guard, and a Roman soldier. That may have been, but when I'm reading now, it says that he was a soldier, a guard for the temple in Jerusalem, and he would go out and punish people who were not doing Judaism by the law. He was very much involved in the law, and he believed with all of his heart that the law was the only way to live. Now, that was very common in the Jewish tradition, that that the 10 Commandments had been laid down, and they had come up with many, many laws, circumcision, not mixing dairy and meat, just many, many of those kinds of, and they were laws. They were grounded in truth. And so that was how Judaism thought that they would do right by God, that if they behaved the laws as laid out by God, that then they would find favor with God, and that is what it took. And so that is what Paul believed until his moment in Damascus, on the road to Damascus. And Jesus said to him, Paul, or Saul, he actually said, which was his Jewish name, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Because what he was doing at that time was punishing all of those who had turned away from their true Judaism to look at what was then called the Way. It wasn't Christianity yet. Jesus was a Jew. Saul was a Jew. All of the people who were following the Way and listening to the apostles, all of them were Jews, and they were following this way that their Jewish teacher Jesus had taught them, and now the apostles were teaching them. So that was what Paul was doing on the road that day. He was on the way to Damascus and was going about to reach people who were not following the laws of Judaism. When Jesus stopped him in his tracks, evidently there were other people present, and they could hear the words that Jesus said, but they could not see him. And as we know from the story, Paul was struck blind. He was taken to Damascus to a house and left there for 3 days so he could come back to himself. And what happened? What happened was a transformation. What Paul saw, what he experienced, was the resurrection. The actual resurrection of Jesus from the grave. So Paul was housed for 3 days. He didn't sleep and he didn't eat. He just sat there for 3 days. And then he was met, and they coaxed him, brought him back, and he became himself, but not the same Paul that he was. He understood completely what the resurrection meant to him. And he took it upon himself. He named himself an apostle. He joined the apostles. They were not thrilled with the idea. The thing is, is that the apostles spoke Hebrew, which was they could only use it in Jerusalem and in that area that they were in. These were not educated men or women, and so their message was only given there. And it was decided, I guess, after a while, that Paul, who was very educated, was put through school. He knew Greek. He was quite well educated and could speak all over the Mediterranean. And so that Paul would talk to the Gentiles, that would be his bag there. So, he began doing that, and as we all know, he wrote letters to everybody. There's Corinthians and there's Romans and, a lot of different places that he was writing letters to and from, often from jail. He was locked up. Somebody said that they figure it was a course of 10 years overall that he actually spent in prison that last half of his life. But Paul did no longer speak in a literal manner. He did not speak or even think in a linearly. He spoke in paradox. He spoke in paradox because what he realized through having experienced the resurrection, what he realized is it is not this or that it is this and that. And rather than seeing that in that world of duality that we talk about, and we know that there is not duality when it comes to the divine, when it comes to God. It is the absolute. We know it is this and that. It is all of that. And so as Paul spoke in paradox, what he came to realize was the sinner that he was, and he called himself a sinner. He knew himself to be a sinner. That was not just something that he chose to be or that he chose to do. It was because he lived strictly out of his body. Up until this point, no one had developed a consciousness that said, Why do I always keep doing that? Now, they were bound, according to Paul, all of them, as long as they lived in the body, they were bound to sin. And that it wasn't that God forgave. God allowed and completely was okay, just really okay with who we were as people. And it was for Paul, and it was with him going within and finding that connection with God. Paul is the one to have said that he lives, God lives and moves in his being, that he lives and breathes and moves by means of God. That is a choice. And so you see that we have a choice, that we do have a shadow side. We all have a shadow side. There are things that, are not pretty. And many of us have experiences of a prior life, of a life prior to entering into this way of living and thinking and being. Similar to Paul. And things change. We can never throw away what we had before, who we were before. The difference is that's not all of who we were. We were also this. We were also sacred and holy. And all God waited for was our awareness of that. This is what the resurrection brought into being. We were redeemed. That is not forgiven. In all of Paul's writing, not once does he use the word forgiven, because it's not forgiven. What he knows is that our names are written in heaven before we ever find a different way. God knows. God knows where we live and what this is. There is that understanding that until we find that aspect of ourselves, until we move out of the logical part of our brain and into the creative part of our brain, that we will never find this in this life. We will never find that peace that we spoke about in the meditation. We will never find that sense of being loved, because we will walk through life feeling like we're not good enough. When we think that we are sinners and that we sin and that there is no redemption unless it's being good, well, then we're bound to fail, because we're human. We are bound to go back, left to our own devices, to that shadow. What an amazing, amazing gift. And as I read through Paul and hear him speak, I am beginning to understand what he is talking about as being a sinner who no longer exists. He no longer exists as that. He is both. He is all. And that is what we come to be when we find unity, when we find new thought, when we find a spiritual way of living our life, of releasing, just as we said in the daily word, of releasing that aspect of ourself and releasing our need to be good. Stop being good. Connect with the divine. Find your way to spirit. Find your way to the Christ consciousness that Jesus embodied and told us about. Paul was evidently the beginning of the Christian church, and he did not know that. He had no idea that he was the founding member of the Christian church, that all of what we know today has been based on for these last 2,000 years. And it's so interesting because there are people who go from one extreme to the other. There are churches even today that focus on the crucifixion. They focus on the crucifixion. And there are other churches that focus only on the resurrection. It's both. The crucifixion is what we do to ourselves. It's not the being hung on the cross. It's the beating ourselves up and continuing to do things that aren't good for us, that aren't good at all. That's crucifying ourselves, because then we just keep imparting the idea that we're not good enough. We can't throw that away. Left to our own devices, that's probably true. I know for me that's true. But then there is the resurrection. And I am redeemed. I am redeemed. I am new. I am all of that. But what guides me and what leads me and you is our understanding that I am made in the image and likeness of God, as are you, as are all of life. And so that has been my path, and I know that it is yours also, to find that connection, to bring about that felt experience of that connection as often as I can, so that my life is colored by that awareness that I am loved. And that is what unity offers you, is that to walk this path and walk into a place where you are loved, and loved enough until you can begin to love yourself and put yourself together as one. Namaste. What I'd like to remind you of is that Unity of Beaverton lives and it exists by your donations, by your gifts and your tithes. So if you would be interested in giving to Unity at this time, you can mail a check. The address is on the website, or on the website you can make a donation, and that'll be through PayPal. So please do whatever works for you there, and we do look forward to seeing you again when this quarantine is over and we are all safe. Goodbye.